A lot of people that are just around 50 or so find that their career path ended before they thought it would. That's what happened to me. I had worked, as I said, in marketing and sales, and I was working for a company. I got into financial difficulty, and I turned out to be one of the difficulties. So after they let go of me, I thought about what I might do, and the world wasn't full of opportunities for 53-year-old marketing and sales guys. And I knew enough people in the business, I knew enough about the business that I thought, well, why not try to start my own business in a field that I knew a lot about. Anyone here under 50? Leave. Okay. Tonight's program is Encore Entrepreneurs. It's starting a business after age 50. And what we're going to do is talk briefly about why one would want to start a business after 50. I guess you'd have to be a little bit crazy. What it's going to be like, some of the advantages and disadvantages that older entrepreneurs have, and some of the skills you're going to need. And we'll go through each of these areas, and we're going to be talking about a variety of topics just to introduce you to them. We don't expect that in 1 2-hour session we're going to give you a full background on marketing, sales, finance, social media, and all those things. But we're going to expose you to those things. And we'll take questions as we, I've inserted question breaks, so we'll have questions as we go. My background, as Betsy mentioned, is marketing and sales of consumer products. I work for large companies such as Colgate-Palmolive, and I've worked for a variety of venture-backed, angel-backed, family-backed startups. And I started my own business at age 53, and I'm also a very passionate advocate for small business, and I serve as a small business mentor at SCORE. So my business, Component Solutions, is a developer and manufacturer of products that go into backyard swing sets. So when you're driving around in the suburbs and you see backyard wooden swing sets and they have these little plastic fittings and devices on them and metal things, a lot of those might be mine. So who is an Encore entrepreneur? It's sometimes a little bit tough to define. But it's for the purposes of this, it's a person over 50 who wants to start a business in a related or even different career path from what they've been doing. Now, why would you want to start a business over 50? Well, maybe you want some extra income, or you want to stay busy, you want to be involved, share your knowledge. That's why a lot of us at SCORE volunteer to mentor, because we want to share the knowledge that we've gained over 20, 30, 40, in some cases 50 years with others. We've met people who want to start a business as a legacy for their family or their community. A very common reason is to turn a hobby into a career, or simply to fulfill a lifetime desire to do something different. You know, so many of us get trapped in climbing the corporate ladder for so many years, and then all of a sudden we find that we're a little bit freed of that, and it's time to turn to something else that satisfies us. You know, a lot of people that are just around 50 or so find that their career path ended before they thought it would. That's what happened to me. I had worked, as I said, in marketing and sales, and I was working for a company. I got into financial difficulty, and I turned out to be one of the difficulties. So after they let go of me, I thought about what I might do, and the world wasn't full of opportunities for 53-year-old marketing and sales guys. And I knew enough people in the business, I knew enough about the business, that I thought, well, why not try to start my own business in a field that I knew a lot about. So, you know, today our career lifespans, as it were, they're a lot shorter than they used to be. They don't keep you around till 65 anymore and give you the gold watch. You know, when you're 50, you start to become an endangered species. So there's that. A lot of people today don't have the pensions and savings and investment plans that our parents had, unless you're fortunate enough to work for a very large and solvent organization. Generally speaking, your pension or your retirement is what you've been able to put together on your own, and it's very difficult once you get done paying the mortgage and paying for the college tuitions and all that. You may not have too much left after that. And then, of course, the desire to supplement a better lifestyle and to help others as well. So, probably as important as the financial is the desire and ability to stay connected and to stay involved. You've probably all heard that 60 is the new 40, and truly people are so much more active and so much more vibrant today in their later years. I remember when I was a kid, my relatives that were 65 were generally dead or within a year of it. So it's a whole different ball game today. My mother is 90. She just got offered a job last week. So there are whole different concepts of aging and involvement. And there's been a lot of research that shows that staying involved, challenging yourself, learning new things is very important to your mental state and to your physical and emotional well-being. That's well documented. You can read stories about that every day. Very important. And staying in touch with the business and civic communities is very important as well, and having a business allows you to do that. And sharing, as I mentioned earlier, being a mentor, creating a legacy, and providing opportunity for others. I had a client early on at SCORE who wanted to start a business that would employ autistic teenagers because those people didn't have a lot of work opportunities, socialization opportunities, and she had a very good idea for a business that would employ them and give them social and economic opportunities. So there's all different motivations that we have for doing these things. And of course, last but not least, is to do something for yourself. And as I said earlier, we all get caught up in climbing the corporate ladder and paying the mortgage and saving for college and all that. And then at some point we get to the situation where maybe we can do something for ourselves, turn a hobby into a business, or try something that's just totally different from anything we've ever done before. And this is a wonderful opportunity for us as well. Just going to show you a couple of examples of people who've done this kind of thing. This is a company called Northlight Fibers. They're a couple of retired teachers that live on Block Island, a small island off the coast of Rhode Island. And their desire was several-fold. One was to do something totally different. One was to create jobs in their community, because it's a community that's totally tourism dependent, and after Labor Day there are no jobs. And also to maintain a little bit of their educational passion. So what they do is they have this facilities, a mini factory. They turn fiber into yarn and they sell it, and they employ people. And then they also have an educational component, which is a series of tours and lectures about their facility, about fibers, about natural fibers and sustainability and the production of fiber and so forth. So they've combined all these goals into one mini business. This is a business called Flower Angels. It's on Cape Cod, and what Flower Angels does is it takes flowers that are maybe a little bit beyond their prime from florists and grocery stores and so on, and they employ people with disabilities to take those flowers and turn them into nice arrangements, and then they bring those arrangements to nursing homes and places like that where there are people who don't necessarily have anyone to visit them or cheer them up or brighten up their day. What's inspirational about this business, the woman on the right here, this is her fourth career. She started out as a nurse. Her daughter, who's in the center there with the glasses, was born with massive disabilities, and she supported her, and her husband left her. So she supported her daughter first on welfare, and then she started a whale watching business. She got the SBA to lend her $1.5 million to build a boat. That was back in the days when the SBA actually lent money. They don't anymore. but she had a boat built and she had a whale watching business which she sold. And then she took that money and she bought the rights to the Curves franchise for all of Cape Cod and turned that into a multi-million-dollar business and sold that. And now on her fourth career, she's doing Flower Angel. So it's an amazing and inspirational story, but it shows you that you can always do something after the next thing and after the next thing. Heidi Baby Fishing is there's a boyhood friend of my dad's who decided at age 50-something to chuck it all and move to the Florida Keys, and he bought a charter boat, Heidi Baby. He's gone now, the boat's still there. And he started a charter boat fishing business in the Florida Keys. So again, something totally different from living in cold, snowy Connecticut and laboring at what he was doing before. So these are just a few examples of people who've totally broken away and done very unusual things. Now, when you start a business over 50, you're facing some challenges, and you know, a lot of us are maybe not as up on the latest trends in technology as our kids. You know, I was talking to one of my colleagues at SCORE, and I said, "Do you have kids?" And she says, "No." And I said, "Well, then how do you fix your computer?" I mean, most of us are probably not on the cutting edge of the trends in technology. We certainly don't have the physical stamina. I don't think I could do the red-eye flights that I used to do anymore. And of course, the last thing is we have a lot less financial risk tolerance because our runway is shorter. If we make a financial mistake at age 50 or 60 or 70, we don't have a lot of years to recoup those losses. So we're a little bit constrained in some ways when we start a business over 50. I remember when I was at my peak of traveling, I would fly to Los Angeles, take somebody to dinner, fly back and be in my desk at 9 o'clock in the morning. If I did that today, I'd be in the hospital. But when you're younger, you can do that. When you're older, as Clint Eastwood said, a man's got to understand his limitations. That's the bad news. The good news is that as older, more mature people, we have a lot of advantages that younger people don't have. We have broader and better experience, generally speaking. We have more and better contacts because we've been around a long time. We know people. We don't have the same distractions that we had when we were younger. You know, we don't have to run to the Little League field at 6 o'clock. You know, if we wanted to stay and work on something, we can do that. Generally speaking, we have more financial resources because we've maybe been able to put away a little bit of money. We don't have that mortgage anymore, those college tuition payments. Sometimes our income requirements are not as great, again, because we don't have those daily living expenses, and our goals are different. We're looking for personal satisfaction rather than climbing the corporate ladder. So before, while we were on the treadmill, we couldn't really do what we wanted to do, and now we have all these advantages, all these resources that we've built up over a lifetime of work. And you'll be shocked when you start getting into this. You'll be shocked at how much you know and how many people you know and how many contacts you have that can help you. It's not apparently obvious to you, but it will be as you start working on it. So a lot of things that we have that you didn't have and that the 20-year-olds today don't have. Now, working for yourself, if you've never done it before, is going to be very different for all of you. You're going to be responsible for making the business go. You're going to do everything that needs getting done, or you're going to have to find somebody to get it done. You're going to have to know everything about what's going on, even though you're going to delegate and manage in some cases. But really, it's going to be about you. You're going to have to broaden your horizons a little bit, challenge yourself, and be much more involved in all aspects of the company. Now, most of us, I was in marketing, other people I know were in finance or accounting, and they were very good at what they did, but they didn't know what I did, and I didn't know what they did. When you own your own company, you better know everything. Okay? You'll know everything from bookkeeping to marketing to sales, and you'll know what's going on in your own business. Now, believe it or not, it's very exciting to do that because you're going to be learning things that you never knew before. You learn about your bookkeeping, learn about those things that some other fellow was doing before. Now, you're going to know about all those things. You may have an opportunity to lead other people if you're fortunate enough to employ people. And the big thing to me is to succeed on your own, to eat what you catch. That's actually me there with that fish. But there's nothing more satisfying at the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the year to know that what you've earned, you created. You went out, you caught that, you hunted it down, and it's yours. Nobody else made it for you. So the first thing you want to ask yourself, are you ready for this? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to ask questions and get guidance? You're willing to do the less glamorous things. We have a fellow at Score who started a business, was very, very successful, sold it for millions of dollars, and then he started a second business. And when he started the second business, he was unhappy because he had to go back to making the coffee and emptying the trash, and he didn't like it, and he quit. So you have to be ready to do those things and take on those less glamorous tasks, and you have to be responsible to others. That is, if you have employees or investors, then you have a responsibility, right? You've got to pay back your investors, you've got to generate enough work for your employees, enough income. So there's a lot of responsibility there. So before you get into this, you want to think about whether or not you're ready to take on those responsibilities. Now, not all of us know everything about everything, that's for sure. So you have a base of knowledge, you have your own skills. Maybe you were an accountant, so that part's going to be easy for you, but the marketing is going to be hard. Or like myself, it's the other way around. I knew the marketing, I hated the accounting. So none of us can know everything, but the big thing is, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to ask people questions? Are you willing to enlist help where you need it, whether it's free help like Score, or it's hiring somebody to do something that you're either not good at or not comfortable with? You have to ask yourself that as well. Now, can everybody here do things like email, Word, Excel, all that? Pretty much? Okay. You're going to need that. Obviously, your organizational skills and priorities, marketing and sales and finance, and we're going to talk about each of these just a little bit, again, very at a very cursory level. One of the things about being your own boss is that you're not your own boss. Your customers are your boss, and you've got to be customer focused all the time. I tell a story. I have a customer that when he calls me, if I don't call him back in an hour, he thinks I'm dead, because he's just used to that level of interaction. But truly, you need to be focused all the time. I never take a vacation, or a true vacation. I take my laptop with me everywhere I go. When I had a boat, a bigger boat, I took my laptop on the boat, and I would correspond with my customers from the deck of my boat. You're never done. I turn my computer off on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that's it. So maybe a little bit extreme, but you need to be responsive. You need to accept criticism when it comes, and you need to be respectful. I had a client. It was just a one-time client that Score came to visit me. He had a business, and he had very detailed records. He did an excellent job of keeping his records. And what he found was that about 90% of his business was new business. He had no repeat customers. And after I talked to him for an hour, I figured out why he had no repeat customers. Because he was obnoxious and he couldn't get along with people. So he had to constantly generate new customers. He was good at what he did, but he was so obnoxious that nobody wanted him around. So very interesting story. Guy spent all of his time generating new business because he couldn't keep any repeat business. So obviously he was not respectful of his customers. One of the things I've seen over my years in business, and this is for young people, middle-aged and older people, is they get into a business without really reality checking it. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can do that. But some of the things you have to ask yourself is, how many customers do you need? How many transactions a day, a week? How many hours can you work? And so forth. And what's the dollar value of those transactions? And is it enough to cover your expenses? So if you're going to have a coffee shop or something like that, how many cups of coffee you're going to serve? How many dollars does that represent? How many gross profit dollars does that represent? How much rent will that cover? How much help will that cover? How much of your own salary and benefits will it cover? And you would just be amazed at how many people jump into a business, they buy a business, or they start a business without thinking about these things. This is incredible. The third point there, how many hours can you work? If you're in a business, a service business that's your own service, for example, you're going to be a personal trainer, a dog walker, an accountant, a web developer, something like that, where you are the business, your service is the business, probably lucky if you can work 50% of the time. Excuse me. Because there's going to be customer overlap or lack of overlap, there's going to be seasonality, there's going to be time of day issues with your business. So you don't think, well, I'm going to be a personal trainer, I'm going to make $70 an hour, and I'm going to work 40 hours a week. That's, you know, $2,800 a week. That's 100 and some odd thousand a year. It doesn't work that way, because the people who want to get trained all want to get trained at the same time, and you can't take them all as customers. So you apply that to any business you want to be in. So figure about half the time is realistic for you. Now, since we're talking about going into a business that perhaps we don't know anything about, we have to figure out how we're going to make some projections about a business that we've never been in before. How do you project the unknown? Well, fortunately, our government keeps statistics on everything known to man. So you can go into this general census or the industrial census, and you can get data on every business. Every industry has a trade association, and those trade associations keep statistics on every aspect of their business. There are trade and consumer publications, and they keep statistics on every aspect of that industry or business. So if you want to open a bicycle shop, you can get a hold of the people at Bicycling Magazine, and they keep statistics on how many people ride bicycles and how much money they spend every year on bicycle parts and things like that. And then, of course, today we have the luxury of the internet. You can Google a lot of these things too. So there are ways we can do that. We can also look at franchise offering circulars from similar concepts. So if you're going to open a donut shop, you might want to get your hands on a franchise circular from Dunkin' Donuts or somebody like that. It'll give you some idea of how much business they do, what the costs are to get it started, and things like that. Counting heads is another thing you can do. If you're going to open a hair salon, stand outside a hair salon, see how many people walk in and out every day, multiply that by some average dollar value per transaction, you get an idea of what it's going to be. The only thing is you have to be careful, because it's busier on Saturday than it is on Monday. Same thing with a restaurant. It's busier at dinner time than it is at 3 in the afternoon. So you got to use your head. You can talk to people in similar businesses. One of the things I found, if you call somebody in another part of the country and they don't perceive you as a threat, very often they'll be very willing to help you out. So if you want to start a microbrewery in Boston and you call one in Seattle and tell them what you're doing, they'll be very willing to talk to you. If you call one down the street in Boston, they're going to hang up the phone. But you can definitely talk to people in similar businesses. One thing I would actually put at the top of the list is to try to work part-time in a similar business. You want to have a coffee shop, go to work in a coffee shop. You want to have a job you want to own a hair salon, go cut hair for somebody else. This is the best way to really learn, A, if you like doing it, and B, what some of the pitfalls are. You can learn what they do well, what they don't do well, what you could do better. You can count the number of heads that come through in a given day. So this is really, we call it learning on somebody else's nickel. Brief story, we have a fellow at SCORE who used to run 50 Wendy's franchises, and he went to hire a Wendy's manager, a young woman, and he offered a job on one condition. He said, I want you to come to work for me as a Wendy's manager for 1 day. You've got the job, but you've got to come to work for me for 1 day before you officially start. So she went in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and at 11 a.m. she quit. So she learned in 3 hours that she really didn't want to be a Wendy's manager, but it sounded pretty good before that. The other thing you can do is look at businesses for sale. There are business brokerage websites. There's businesses for sale on Craigslist and so on. You can look at the businesses and see what they claim as far as revenues. Now again, you've got to be very skeptical, because when they're trying to sell the business, they're going to exaggerate the revenues and the profitability. But if you want to get into it, you can get their tax returns, and you can get a real idea of what somebody's doing in a particular kind of business. So that's another way of doing this. So is it all clear to everybody about how you can go about reality checking your dream? So getting started, and we'll go through these in a little bit of detail, but you're going to have a business plan. You're going to decide on the structure of the business, and so on. So I'm not going to read these to you. You can read them, and we'll go through each area very briefly. Again, high level look at all of this, and then we can help you later on get into any one of these areas. So the first thing is the business plan. Now the business plan really gets overblown. Has anybody gone online to look for a business plan template or anything like that? Yeah, pretty complicated? Yeah. Generally they tend to be very complicated and overblown, because people are using them, trying to use them to get financing, to attract investment capital. For us as Encore entrepreneurs, we're not going to do that, because more than likely either we're going to finance the venture, or we have investors that we know that are going to do that for us, or we have collateral, and we'll talk about this later. But so our business plan is not really going to be a selling tool. It's going to be guidance for us, clarify our thinking. So the thing I would say is use your own words, tell your own story, understand the business plan, and internalize it, make it your own, and use it as a roadmap. So you're not trying to impress anybody here. You're trying to get down, what's the guts of the business? What is my business? What am I going to do? How is it different from other offerings in the marketplace? How is it special? Who are my customers? How many of them am I going to have? And some rough financial projections around that. That's really all your business plan is. So very simple. And then we keep it in our mind and keep it handy as a roadmap, and we check every once in a while, well, am I doing what I said I was going to do? Am I going in a direction I thought I was going in? Do I need to change a direction? Do I need to alter something? Am I doing as well as I thought I would? Do I need to do anything along those lines? So just use it as a roadmap. So as I already said, the guts, what's the business? How's it different? Who are the customers, and how are you going to get them? And we'll talk about that as well. Anybody remember Peter Lynch right here in Boston? Fidelity Investments, yeah. Yeah, never invest in an idea you can't illustrate with a crayon, right? So the best ideas are generally fairly simple and straightforward, and then good execution. One of the important things, either in starting a business or running a business, is starting with a broad strategy. Going back to, again, what is my business? What do I want it to be? Where do I want to go? And how am I going to get there? And then from there, you work to the tactical. Okay, what kind of ads am I going to run? What kind of production am I going to have? These things. We see so many people at SCORE who come to us, and they've already formed the corporation or the LLC, and they already have a website, and they already have a brochure and business cards and all this stuff. And they haven't thought very much about what they are and where they're trying to go. They just start creating things. And this is a function really of the computer age, because you can create stuff very easily, right? You can go online, you can for $9.95 you get 200 business cards, and then for another $9.95 you can get a website, and on it goes, right? So there's a tremendous temptation to start at the backwards end, start at the creative end, the implementation end, instead of at the strategic or directional end. I had 2 young women come to me at a trade show. They were partners in a business, and they had 2 different business cards. One was white and one was black. They hadn't even consulted each other on the business card design, because they're just so happy to go online and make business cards without thinking about the business. And I guess the one thing, that the name of the business was the same on both, but it was different typefaces, and it was kind of wacky. But it's a very good example of putting the cart before the horse, putting the implementation ahead of the strategy. And structuring your business, most Encore entrepreneurs will have either sole proprietorship or an LLC or an S corporation. Some may form a partnership if you have partners, or a nonprofit entity. And the key variable here is protecting your personal assets. If your business is not people intensive, if there's not a lot of risk, let's say you're a web developer or something like that, you can be a sole proprietor. That's a DBA. You get the license from your town. It's usually $25, $30, something like that, because you don't really have a lot of risk in terms of you're not going to injure people or anything like that. Now, if you're making a food product, or you have a retail outlet, or you're going to be working with people like as a personal trainer or something like that, where you're going to be handling people and moving them around and stuff, then you may want to figure out some form of incorporation where you have a little bit more protection of your personal assets. Is that clear to people? When you're a DBA or a sole proprietor, you are the business. So you're at risk financially, you're at risk from a liability standpoint as well for anything that might go wrong between you and your customers, or you and the outside world. When you have an incorporation, your personal assets and you personally are shielded to a degree by the corporate veil. Now, obviously, if you do something grossly wrong, you're going to have problems. But you really need to consider the type of business you have and the type of structure that you want. We can help you with that at SCORE. We have a nice matrix of all these considerations and can help you. Another thing you're going to have to think about is the licensing and regulatory aspects of your business. In Massachusetts, many types of businesses require some kind of licensing or regulatory oversight. You want to be a real estate agent, you have to have a license. You want to cut hair, you have to have a license. You want to be an electrician, you have to have a license, and so on and so on and so forth. And then, of course, many industries have some regulatory compliance. For example, if you're in the children's products business like I am, I have to test all my products for potential toxic materials, lead, heavy metals, and things like that. So, Consumer Product Safety Commission regulates me. If you want to make some garden products and things like that, you may run into regulatory issues with the EPA, or if you want to get into any kind of delivery of health services, then you could be dealing both with the state and the federal government and the FDA and things like that. So every industry has its own set of standards, and the brief advice I give you here is learn the rules and follow them, and get training if necessary. You know, there's a huge industry, a cottage industry in Massachusetts today of, well, not just Massachusetts, throughout the country, food startups. People are making almond butter and juices and all kinds of natural, healthful, organic products, but these things are all regulated. So you have to really know the rules. You have to know about sanitation, food handling, and there's places where you can get the training on this, but you have to know where they are and what they are and how to get these various forms of training and certification. So It's not magic, but you need to know that it exists. Now, I mentioned earlier that we over 50 don't have a lot of runway to recover from any kind of a financial setback, so we want to protect our assets. So we want to understand those industry guidelines, and we want to follow those things religiously. You know, a lot of people start at the bottom of this list here with the corporate structure. Corporate structure helps you, but the best way to avoid a problem is not to create a problem to begin with. So understand your business, understand all the regulations, and follow them as closely as you can. Avoid the errors to start with. The second thing is you get the insurance that you need for your business, because this is America. Anybody can sue anybody for anything. And if you're properly insured, your insurance company will take up the litigation for you. Very, very basic lawsuit today would cost you, I mean, very, very basic, will cost you $30,000 out of pocket. So if you don't have somebody willing to do that for you or able to do that for you, you could be in trouble. Even if you win, you're going to be out, as I said, minimum of $30,000. It could be a lot more than that. When I was in the swing business, we had a couple of large liability suits. Thankfully, we won them, but the insurance company defended us, and I'm sure they spent a lot of money doing it. And then the last thing, which we talked about first, is having the proper corporate structure to protect your assets as much as possible. The other thing we want to do to protect ourselves is to be right with the government, which means if we're going to need a federal employer tax ID number, or EIN. It's very easy to get. You go to, well, you can see it there, irs.gov. And same thing with our state. We want to get our Massachusetts tax ID and forms. We can do that. And the state just put in a pretty good new system called Tax Connect. And you can do virtually all your tax filings and payment in this one area, which is great. Before, you had different areas and different websites you had to go to for different things. Now you still have a different site for your DUA, your unemployment, and one or two other things, your Secretary of State annual report. But by and large, anything you need to do for the state, you can do right at Mass Tax Connect. And so it's very simple. So it's a good system. You need to open a business bank account. It's a business checking account. You should get it if you anticipate any expenses. You're going to go to Staples and buy supplies and things, or you're going to travel for the business. You should get a business credit card, so you keep all that separate from your personal. And if you're going to take credit cards, you need a merchant account. Two things: keep track of all your legitimate business expenses. You may not know what those are at this moment, but legitimate business expenses are things like rent and utilities and supplies for your printer, and having your computer repaired and your telephone connection and all that. Taking your spouse to Hawaii on a scuba diving trip is not a legitimate business expense. And the other thing is, never mingle your personal and your business finances. That's why I said open up a business account and get a business credit card. Don't be mixing things up. It's a big pitfall. It's a big red flag for the IRS, and it could cause you grief down the road. Even if you're doing everything right, you don't want to create problems for yourself. Everybody clear on that? You're going to need a bookkeeping system of some sort. Now, this can be as simple or complicated as you like. Most small businesses are using QuickBooks, or you could even use Excel if the business is simple enough. If it's very straightforward, like you're, let's say again, a dog walker, and you just charge by the hour, you could do that with Excel, right? I spent 4 hours walking dogs today, $25 an hour, $100 in revenue, and I had 30 miles in mileage expense against that. So very simple. If it's a little more complicated, you got multiple products and inventory and things like that, you may want to go the QuickBooks route. Again, we do a whole workshop just on this. So I'm giving you a very high-level overview. But one of the most important things to think about is what information am I going to need to capture? One of the problems I had when I started my business, I never anticipated that I would have as many customers as I ended up having, or that I would have as many vendors as I ended up having. So I bought a really cheap bookkeeping system. It had room for 40 vendors, which I never even thought I would have 4, much less 40. Well, I blew through those in no time, and then I had to go back and redo all my bookkeeping again because I had to buy a new system and I had to re-input all that old data. So think about all the things. It might sound simple at first. You're going to sell t-shirts, but then maybe someday you're going to have men's, women's, children's, small, large, extra large, triple extra large, cotton polyester blend, white, navy blue, pink, green, and so on. So you can see very quickly you could have a lot of products, and you could have a lot of customers, and you could have a lot of suppliers. So think in advance about all the information that you're going to need to capture and how you're going to do that. The other thing I like to tell people to do is keep their financial data in as much detail as possible. So for example, you have certain things that are office expenses, like your rent, your utilities, your office supplies, and so on. It'd be very tempting as those expenses come in to just lump them into office supplies, right? Office expense. But then you can't go back and figure out, well, how much am I spending on rent? How much is utilities? How come I'm spending so much or so little? You don't really know unless you go back and dig into the data. So keep it in more detail, because you can always combine it. You can always aggregate data, but it's very hard to disaggregate data down the road. So just remember that as well. Anticipate all the things you may want to know 3 years from now, and keep it in that level of detail. Aggregate it if you need to, but make sure you have the detail. How many people work somewhere where they've seen their company's financial statements, either income statement, balance sheet? Some people? Half? Okay. Well, now with your own business, you're going to see them all. Yeah. Think of the income statement as like the report card. The income statement is a record of your progress, what you did in a month or a quarter or a year. Very basic, right? So I had this much sales, I had this much expenses, I had this much profit. Think of the balance sheet as a snapshot of the company at any one moment in time. Now, generally, you don't look at the balance sheet on a Tuesday on the 7th of April. You look at it at the end of the month, end of the quarter as well. But again, it's a snapshot taken in a moment of time. And then your cash flow is the impact of the changes in your cash, and it comes through your operations. So when you sell product and you get paid for it, cash comes in, and when you incur expenses, cash goes out, right? So cash flow is just a movement of cash in and out of your business based on the operation of your business. Is that clear to everybody, those three things? As I said, we have a whole 2-hour seminar just on that, and you're welcome to take it at any time we offer it. We give you a little more in-depth view of that. So again, today we're just going over these things at a high level and making you aware of what they are and that they exist. Any questions on this? Marketing. Marketing is simply about getting and keeping customers, right? It's the hardest part of the business. When people come to us at SCORE, usually the first thing they come in with is, I want help with setting up the LLC. Well, that's great. That's about 15 minutes. Now what are we going to do? The real hard part of any business is going out and getting the customers and keeping those customers and getting them to part with your their hard-earned money and give it to you. So who are they? How are you going to reach them? And what are you going to say to them when you do reach them? What's the value proposition? I want to walk your dog because your dog is going to be twice as healthy when he gets done with me. I want you to buy my peanut butter because it's all natural, organic, and you're going to be able to jump 10 feet after you eat a jar of it. So who are the customers? How am I going to talk to them? And when I do talk to them, what am I going to say? How many people have heard of the 5 Ps in marketing? Yeah, good. Okay, excellent. It's my area. So these are the way they're generally presented. It's not really the order of importance, but the first P, of course, is the product or the service. A service is a product, right? So whatever it is you're doing is a product. And we'll talk very briefly about each of these: price, positioning, place, and promotion, okay? Price is obvious, but the biggest mistake that we see at SCORE is that people underprice their product or their service. And usually when they come to us, after we get by the 5 minutes of setting up the LLC, the next thing we ask them is how they're going to price their product or their service. And they invariably say, oh, a little less than everybody else. And then we say, why? They say, well, because I want to have customers. Well, we all want to have customers, of course, but they think that by underpricing the product, that's going to help them get more customers. It may, but it also may help them go out of business faster. So when you go to price your product, you look at the competition, of course, but you've got to think about, well, why are all the accountants charge $150 an hour? There's a reason for that, because that's what it costs to do that work. They've got to pay somebody, they've got rent, heat, lights, so on. Same thing when you go to get your car fixed, right? It's $100 an hour, have your car worked on? Everywhere you go, right? There's a reason for that. That's what it costs. So for you to think that you can work on a car for $70 an hour when everybody else is working on a car for $100 an hour is quite silly. It's unrealistic. It's not going to work out. The other thing that we talk about in pricing is a lot of times the prospective customer might think your business or your product is inferior because it's priced too low. So people, when people go to hire a lawyer, right, for a lawsuit, they look for the $500 an hour guy, not the $200 an hour guy, because they think the more expensive lawyer is the better lawyer. And it's the same with products. It's the same with anything. Positioning is a vague but very important concept, and really the key thing on this page, because positioning is where does your product or service fit into the entire array of products and services in the space in which you operate. So if you're, again, you're making homemade organic peanut butter, well, you're going to position that probably as a very healthful, unique, special, probably higher priced product. And that's going to lead you to some other decisions, like putting a very nice label on a very nice package, selling it in more upscale markets like Whole Foods or places like that versus Stop and Shop or Star Market, because you're positioning that product in its entirety in a particular place. On the other hand, you may have a very quick and easy and inexpensive way of doing some product or service, and again, you're going to position accordingly. So you want to start first with the positioning, and then everything else will flow from there. You price according to your positioning, you're going to package according to your positioning, you're going to communicate according to your positioning. So place today is a little different from when I started in marketing. In my day, place was grocery store, supermarket, discount house, lumberyard. Well, today you have all those, and you have all kinds of specialty outlets, and you have the internet, the cyberspace, right? So there's all the places, all the distribution channels that your product can follow to go to market. And then your last one is promotion. And promotion here we're talking about in the broadest sense. So promotion would be advertising, public relations, the actual science of promotion, which is a specific discipline unto itself, and so forth. So we have to have a product, a service. We have to position it properly. Positioning is going to tell us how we're going to price it. It's also going to tell us where we're going to place it. And it's also going to tell us where and how we're going to promote it, okay? we have a whole 2-hour seminar on this as well. And we have a whole 1.5-hour seminar just on pricing. So as you can see, each of these things is a field of study unto itself. Now you've taken the leap, you've decided you're going to go ahead with this crazy idea, and you think you got the better mousetrap. So how are you going to finance this thing? Most of the businesses that we see are self-financed. That doesn't mean it's the only way, but that just happens to be what we see a lot at SCORE. So bootstrapping, which is kind of starting the business with funds that you have and making it pay for itself as it goes along. That's what I did with my business. So I had customers, I sold them product, I got paid for it, then I bought more product, and I invested in more designs and more machinery and so forth, and just kind of built it along that way. Another avenue we call family and friends, so it's pretty self-explanatory. Tapping the nest egg, this is common for Encore people because sometimes they have a nest egg. Usually when you're 22 you don't. Debt financing is basically borrowing money, and vendor and customer financing. Sometimes it's possible to finance a product through your vendors and your customers. And how do you do that? Well, if you can get your customers to pay for it early and your suppliers to accept payment for it late, you can use that money in between to run your business. I worked for a company where our suppliers would let us pay in 90 days, and we got paid in 30 days. So we'd ship $1 million worth of stuff out the door, we'd get $1 million back, and we didn't have to pay the vendor for 3 months. So you can do that. When you go to finance your business, first thing you got to think about is how much do you need? How much money do you need to finance this business? That goes back to the reality check, right? And it goes back to projecting your cash flows. So if I'm going to start an ice cream shop, I've got to pay rent on the store for a couple of months probably. I've got to buy the ice cream machine. I've got to buy all the cream and the sugar and all those things. And I've got to do all that before I sell my first ice cream cone. So I've got to pay my help. So I've got to figure out all this. I've got to figure out what I'm going to use it for. One thing I always tell people is, whatever you think you need, can you cut that back a little bit? That's important for 2 reasons. One is you don't want to get in too deep, and secondly, it shows potential lenders that you have taken a realistic look at the business and you're not just an unsophisticated, greedy type person that's asking somebody else to give you a lot of money and has no idea how to pay it back. So the methods obviously depend on the amount you need. If you're going to start a dog walking business or a web development business or some personal service business, you don't really need much money for that because you're going to do this. You're going to provide the service, and the customers are going to pay you, and other than maybe some rent or something like that, you don't really need a lot of funds. If you're going to do the aforementioned ice cream shop, you may need $250,000 before you ever sell the first ice cream cone. So this all depends on the type of business and the stage of the business. Now, if your business is a new startup, you're starting it yourself, and it doesn't have assets or anything like that, it doesn't have a history, your personal credit history and your personal guarantees and collateral will be very important in the lending decision. So before you even think about going to a bank or anything like that, check your credit score. It's got to be pristine, because that's one of the first things the banks look at when they're considering lending. Okay. Now you can do your financing a lot of different ways. One way is what's called a paycheck or a credit card loan. These are generally typically, let me back up a little bit. Typically, the easier money to get is more expensive, and as the money gets harder to get, it's less expensive. So credit card loan or paycheck loan, typically these are capped out at about $25,000, and they carry pretty significant interest, somewhere usually in the 15% range. So easy to get, limited amount, very high cost per thousand. Something that's relatively new today, online and peer-to-peer loans. These are online lending vehicles whereby people invest money to be lent to other entrepreneurs. Again, typically smaller amounts, higher interest rates, but not as bad as we were talking about the paycheck loans. You might be able to get a little more, $40,000 or $50,000 here, and you might pay in the 8, 9, 10, 11% range for those. Next down the list would be traditional bank loan. And again, this is depending on your credit worthiness, the solidity of your business plan, and so on. And these are harder to get, but again, less expensive. On my bank loan, I pay, oh boy, I want to say maybe 4% or less, something like that, in terms of annual percentage rate. So harder to get, but less expensive. Microloans are generally, as the name implies, very small. These are for startup entrepreneurs. There are various government microloan programs, for example, through the SBA. If you want to get a hold of Norm, and he can give you more detail on those. There are sometimes there are charitable foundations that do this, other organizations. Again, very small, but modest interest. Crowdfunding, are people familiar with crowdfunding? So these are things like Indiegogo and these kinds of things. Requires a little bit of work, and it requires some savvy in terms of the use of social media and electronic media. But again, it can be a pretty good form of funding if you're good at it. We had a client at SCORE who raised about close to $80,000 this way. We've had many other clients who have not been able to raise anything. So it's really depends on your proposition as well as how well you can package it. And then, of course, equity financing. That is selling shares or portions of your business for investment to outside investors. How many people have seen a show called Shark Tank? Okay, so we're going to give you $200,000 for 20% of your company. Okay, it's a very, very, very unrealistic and simplistic look at equity financing. Equity financing has a lot of benefits, but also has a lot of pitfalls. The arrangements are very, very complicated and very sophisticated, favoring the investors, not the entrepreneur. Doesn't mean you shouldn't go for it if you have the appropriate type of business. That's a business that can scale up rapidly, that can reach telephone book numbers without a lot of investment. But the typical business that we see does not fit that form of investment. One of the big differences between owning your own business and working for somebody else is kind of being the one that's both responsible for all the good and all the bad. And there's both a practical and an emotional roller coaster that goes with this. You know, some days you have a great day, your customer calls up and orders a lot of product, and while you think you're a real genius, even though you had nothing to do with it. And then the next day, something goes wrong, and you think, oh my goodness, I must be one of the dumbest guys in the world. And neither one is really accurate, but because you're the one that's involved in every aspect of the business, you tend to feel these things more directly and more emotionally than when you work for somebody else. Because when you're part of a big group, the achievements are diffused, and also the responsibilities are diffused. When it's your own business, you tend to feel these ups and downs a lot. This is something I've discovered a lot as a lone entrepreneur, and something that you have to learn to maybe cope with and guard against. And as part of that, really, the thing I would tell people that I've learned over 13 years is don't go it alone. There are so many resources available to you that maybe we don't think to tap, but we have family and friends. Again, we've gotten to the point where we've probably got ex-colleagues that we can talk to. We've got friends, we've got relatives, we've got all kinds of people that can talk to us and help us out. We have our professional advisors, our accountants, lawyers, bankers, and so on. And some people you wouldn't even think about, like your insurance broker, your suppliers, your competitors. I got my insurance broker through a guy who was my printer, and then I got my accountant through my industrial designer, and so forth. So you see, you develop this web of relationships, and you can tap into them, and you can use them, and you can bounce ideas off of them. Very important, because the hardest thing about starting a business by yourself is being by yourself. Can't emphasize that enough. There's a lot of other resources in the community. The Chamber of Commerce, if you're in a smaller town or even a city like Boston, the Boston Chamber tends to be larger institutions like the hospitals and so on, but they do have smaller members. Industry associations are very important. So if you're in the, you want to be in the garden business, you would join the Lawn and Garden Association. If you're a a journalist, you might want to join a local professional organization and so on. Very important. SBA, you met Norm earlier. I can't emphasize enough that you should take advantage of those people wherever you can. Read that resource guide, see what applies to you. SCORE, we have 50 mentors in Boston. We have over 50 now, and they have background in everything from accounting to marketing, finance, from plastics, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, anything you can name, we have somebody who's done it pretty much. NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business. This is an organization that represents and lobbies on behalf of small businesses. Usually these businesses are in the 10 employees and smaller. AIM, which is Associated Industries of Massachusetts. They tend to be the larger employers, but again, it's an organization you can belong to. And even if you don't belong, they do a lot of great studies on, and they offer a lot of programs on employee training, energy conservation, and things like that. So again, these are all things that you can get for free or for not very much, and take advantage of Women's Enterprise Institute for the women in the group. This is an organization that puts on a lot of seminars and workshops, also has a lot of networking opportunities for you. So again, don't be alone. Enjoy the rewards of being a small business owner. I find it rewarding. It's very satisfying being a member of the business community, controlling your destiny, managing your schedule, and so on. A few years ago, my father was very ill. I was able to work my schedule around helping take care of him. It was something I could never have done if I had worked for somebody else. So this is the plus. You know, I mentioned before, I never turned my computer off. Well, some days I get to do other things that I couldn't do before. And you get to sign the checks on the front instead of on the back. Very important. Any veterans in the audience here? Okay. Now, if you're one of these people that's starting the business as a legacy, you want to pass it on to your family or some other associate, then you need to plan for that. And I'm sure you've all read the stories a few years ago about Market Basket, how these people spent $25 million in legal fees to fight each other because, you know, the succession plan wasn't really clearly defined there. So it's very important that you have a succession plan and you know who's going to take over the business and how and under what conditions. The other thing is, if you plan to sell the business and really retire or go on, you know, to something else, factor that into your thinking. You may not want to invest in a new piece of machinery if you're going to sell the business next week, right? Or next year. So factor your time horizon into your business decisions. And in either way, these are very complicated areas, so you want to talk to legal and tax professionals on these, because there are big implications in passing along a successful business to your heirs or your loved ones or your partners. And there you are, sailing off into the sunset after your second career. Any questions about any of the areas that we talked about this evening?
What job was your mom offered, and did she take it?
No, it was in the travel. My mom had been a long-time travel agent, and then of course with the internet, pretty much killed the travel agency business, and so she retired from that. But now people are getting sick of trying to do their own stuff on the internet, and they're going back to travel agents. And one of her old employers called her up and wanted to know if she would like to go back part-time. But she decided to hang up the spikes, which surprised me, because up until very recently she said, "Oh, I'd love to have a job again." So, but so no, she didn't take it. But you know, another point that I glossed over early on is that sometimes when we get a little older, we don't need as much money. I have a client who was a very high-earning professional, and now she makes jewelry, and so I was going over with her what the cost. She had a piece, and she sold it for $500, and I said, "Well, how much was the silver and gold?" "Well, that was $200, so she got $300. I said, "Well, how long did it take you to make it?" Well, to make a long story short, she was working for about $8 an hour. And she used to make over $100 an hour. So, but she was happy with that, because it was something she always wanted to do. She didn't need the money, and it was self-fulfillment. So there's an example of where your situation changes and you can do something that you like, and money is not paramount. So.
Somebody asked about the hot trend of services to senior citizens in terms of that book, their population, our population. See, that would be a cool area, definitely. You know, various services, products.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a growing demographic, isn't it? I was meeting with someone about 2 weeks ago who was in that business, providing not healthcare, but in-home services for elderly people, basically doing the job that your children would do if they lived nearby, you know, coming over to empty the garbage or, you know, pay the phone bill or those kinds of things. So yeah, there's great opportunity there. My wife used to, as a volunteer, do financial services for low-income seniors, help them with their bill paying and, you know, managing their accounts so they didn't get into trouble bouncing checks and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely a growing demographic, and because society is so spread out today, some people don't have people to do those things for them. So yeah, not to mention the health-related issues, but I'm just talking about practical things that one could do for the elderly.
Not everyone had kids, too.
That too. I was once describing what my wife was doing to a colleague. He says, "Oh, basically what the dutiful daughter would do, if she existed." And so that's true. People today, a lot of people don't have children, and if they do, they're spread out, or even if sometimes they're not spread out, they're not overly cooperative or able to help. So a lot of opportunities there. Think about the older people who are not going to be able to drive in a few years. How are they going to get around? Uber, self-driving cars, all kinds of opportunities. I'm looking forward to the self-driving car myself, in about 20 or 30 years. I don't know when they're going to make self-driving boats, but that'll be more important to me. Okay. Well, any more? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope we shed a little bit of light on a lot of areas here. And again, I urge you, don't be alone. Use the resources that are available to you in industry, places like SCORE, the Women's Enterprise Institute, and all these places. There's a lot of people out there. They want to help you. They're happy to help you. It's their job to help you. So take advantage of it, okay? Thank you.